Hey guys, and welcome to this money making guide for Escape from Tarkov. This guide is meant for beginner to intermediate players that have yet to find consistent income sources, as well as advanced players that want to possibly learn a few new things and optimize their methods of making money even further. I'll be taking a little bit of a different approach to this that most money making guides do. There will be no specific routes and or runs that I will discuss with you today. Instead, we will take a broader look at how different kinds of players make money while addressing some useful tips and tricks and a few rules to consider. At the end of this video, you should be able to figure out for yourself what kind of strategy is best for you and your individual playstyle. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's first talk about a couple of rules that I think are very important in order to make money in Escape from Tarkov. Rule number 1. Survive. As intuitive as this rule might sound, it's by far the most important one. Making money in raid is entirely dependent on you actually surviving the raid. No matter what you're doing, ever since the found on raid feature has been added, you're never going to end up making a considerable amount of money from just putting items in your gamma and dying at the end. So, survival is key, and it is not easy at times by any means. Rule number 2. Pick your fights. I see a lot of players, whether it be very new or even more experienced ones, that are confident in their ability to PvP, engage in pretty much every fight possible. Now, PvPing is arguably one of, if not the most fun element in this game, and there's no denying that killing people can make you a good amount of rubles. But as Rule 1 has already stated, survival is the most important thing. Engaging in a fight that puts you in any kind of disadvantage is generally not a good idea, especially if you're in a raid with the main purpose of bringing home the loot and making money from it. Don't be ashamed of dodging risky fights or avoiding that 4-man walking towards you, at least until you have the advantage. You have every right to do so, and it's very important if you're going to want to keep your loot and actually extract. Rule number 3. Loot everything in your path. The wording here might be a bit off. I don't mean that you should loot everything you come across or that you should just loot as much as possible, wherever it is. What's important is that you always loot and take a look at whatever you walk past, given that the current situation and risk assessment allows it. Doing this is essential. It's associated with little to no extra risk and allows you to loot a lot more stuff and therefore make more money. If, for example, you're making your way towards the ZB 1011 extract and customs and you're walking through the forest by Antenna Hill, make sure to take a look at all the stashes and weapon crates that are around in that area. A quick glance will tell you if they've been looted, and if not, then they will surely bring in some more rubles. Doing this can easily end up bringing you in an additional 200 to 300k per raid. Many people tend to underestimate this method for some reason and end up just bolting to their extract of choice after looting what they wanted to loot. Obviously, this doesn't always apply, as in some situations you might want to just get out as soon as possible, not wanting to risk standing still even once more in order to get that sweet Azar or Ledex out without dying and keeping the found rate tag. You need to decide for yourself if and when you want to do this. The more experience you gain on each map, the more you can assess the risk of looting the spots you walk past and decide for yourself when to do it and when not to do it. Rule number 4. Upgrade your hideout. I'm not going into further detail on this in this video, but the hideout allows you to make a lot of passive income the further you progress with it. The Bitcoin farm, water collector, as well as even the scav case, besides a lot of different crafts, can make you a continuous profit without ever having to get into a raid. Make sure to look up more information on this on the Tarkov wiki in case you don't know much about it yet. If there's any interest for it, I might also make another video on this specifically. Rule number 5. Manage your money. Making money is certainly the most important aspect of getting richer, but spending it wisely and not wasting it is just as important. There's a lot of little things you need to keep in mind in order to minimize your expenses and maximize your profits. And a lot of those things have to do with experience and game knowledge. But you can also seek out that knowledge by actively looking for ways to save money and remembering them for the future. For example, make sure to look into all the various barter trades the traders have to offer and assess for yourself if those are cheaper than buying a certain item on the flea. Look at what the item you're trying to sell costs on the flea, what the fee is for it, and compare it with the amount of money the traders offer. Many people end up selling some things for the same, if not even a lower amount of money than what a trader would have offered them, and they end up missing out on additional profits by having to pay the flea market fee. Also look at what kinds of armor, guns, and calibers are the most cost efficient at your current trader level and make decisions accordingly. Running an MP7 with AP ammo doesn't make sense at all if you're not able to buy the AP ammo off of mechanic level 4. You'll pay almost twice as much for the same ammo if you're buying it off the flea. There's way cheaper alternatives. There's a lot to cover on this topic and I've only really scratched the surface, but I hope you get the idea. It's important you try to learn this stuff as much as possible, and with Tarkov being such a complex game, there's always more to learn. Now for the strategies. There's essentially 3 different strategies people make money with specifically. That's a stash run, the good old money run, as well as the more PvP oriented run. These different approaches have different risks and rewards associated with them. Additionally, there's also the 4th option, which is kind of a mix of all of them, and I'm a great proponent of that strategy, but let's look at each one separately. The stash run is really straightforward and a very common strategy advised by other YouTubers on the topic of money making. Everyone that has a bit of experience in Escape from Tarkov knows exactly what stash runners do, and it's not hard to distinguish them from other players if you do happen to run into them. They fit the rat playstyle very well. Essentially, stash runners just run around the outside borders of a chosen map and loot the stashes until they're full and ready to extract. Some bring in budget kits, some run it with bigger kits in order to be able to fully defend themselves, most just run them with only a pistol or even a hatchet and a scaff backpack. This is a very useful way of making money for people that aren't ready to risk fighting others or that just want to have a rather laid back raid without much stress. Ever since stashes have been buffed, stash runs are quite lucrative and definitely make sense for people that are willing to do it. Now, stash runs are very repetitive and quite monotone and can get extremely boring for people that want a little bit of action in the raids. Additionally, they can get all the more frustrating whenever you do end up dying to someone that runs into you after having spent 20 minutes or more running around the map, so keep that in mind. The original money run is what all of those hatchlings on reserve, interchange, or even shoreline are doing. Equipped with a hatchet, an empty gamma, and maybe a backpack. They just run towards certain loot spots and try to scoop up the loot before anyone else before disappearing into the void, aka going for the nearest extract after the first 5 minutes of the raid. This strategy is something that is being advised by many money making guides as well, and there's several routes that you can look up on YouTube if you don't know any just yet. Now, this strategy is quite high risk, high reward, as your success pretty much entirely depends on the kind of spawn you get and how lucky you get with other players' behavior. If, for example, you're just planning to rush tech light on interchange in the hopes of getting a GPU or two, you'll end up wasting an entire raid if you happen to spawn on the opposite side near idea. And even if you do end up spawning close to tech light, you might end up getting head eyes the second you try to leave the store by the second nearest spawn that has made it to tech light as well in the meantime. This strategy is very popular regardless, with many players way past level 30 and higher still doing it regularly. It can be very lucrative. Very lucrative, but it's also just as repetitive as running stashes and can be quite frustrating to do at times. It can also take a great toll on your KD and survival rate if you care about any of that stuff. Now for what I call the PvP focused money run. Going for PvP specifically can't really be called a money run by any means. It's quite the opposite in fact. PvP can be an absolute money sink. The reason why I'm including this in this list though is as follows. People that are fairly confident in their ability to consistently win gunfights are likely to make good money through PvP too from time to time. It's not nearly as consistent and it's most definitely not suitable for most of the Tarkov community, but some highly skilled players especially can make it work. But even they end up looting whatever they can while they're at it, and that's really where their real money comes from. After all, most kits you loot off of other DAP players are more likely to be used again by you instead of being liquidated. Somehow though, a lot of players end up going for a lot of PvP in order to make money, thinking that that's the way to go. It's quite the intuitive thing after all. Getting loot through other players is pretty much the main income source in most other survival games. But trust me, even your favorite streamers avoiding fights and playing slowly and carefully from time to time in order to survive. Now, why did we look at all of these different money making strategies and why did I make it sound like none of them are really that good? Well, I'm not trying to say that none of them work or aren't useful by any means. In fact, it's important to know about them and their advantages and disadvantages. The real strategy that I advise is what we're going to address now, the mixed strategy. Quite self-explanatory, isn't it? Why not combine these different strategies into one, weighing out each aspect depending on your individual playstyle? Let me explain. Say you're pretty new to the game. You've got a lot to learn in terms of gunplay, map knowledge, PvP, and so on. If you just look up some hatchet run money guide and try to pull it off continuously, you'll only end up learning about a couple of loot spawns on one specific map, all the while losing a lot of time you could have also spent simultaneously learning how to PvP, where stashes are, and how to traverse the map better. And all of that knowledge is what actually allows you to optimize your gameplay and survive more, therefore making more money in the long run. Even if you do end up making a good amount of money after running a certain hatchet loot run for a couple of hours, what's going to happen next? You'll buy yourself some good gear for once with your new hard-earned rubles and load into a map, not having made any additional experience that could help you with winning your next fights or doing that one quest you're stuck on. Your likelihood of survival is pretty much still the same, as you haven't really been able to improve upon that at all while doing your stash runs these last few raids. Now, you're very likely to end up losing a lot of that money again to players that have more experience in PvP, and you're back to running stashes. This is a vicious cycle many Escape from Tarkov players are stuck on. The most optimal way of making money, in my opinion, is to actually try and combine all of the strategies we've talked about until now in a way that allows you to profit as much as possible, as well as to learn as much as possible. Knowledge is key, and attaining that knowledge is just as important as making money in the first place. So, how do we combine these strategies? First things first, choose your map. There's several maps you can make money on. There's no right or wrong here, except for maybe factory, cause no loot there. Yet, what matters is that you choose the map you're most likely to survive on, maybe because you have the highest amount of experience on it and you feel most comfortable on it. Say I'm a little low on cash right now and I want to get into a couple of raids with the main goal of making money. I'm aware of the possible PvP that I might encounter, so I'll actually equip a nice kit that I can easily afford and that I'm willing to lose. I choose to go to customs because I've spent a lot of time on that map and I found it very easy to traverse it without coming across other players that often. Now, as soon as I spawn, I decide what to do depending on my spawn. I try to think of the closest possible player spawns as well as the closest loot spawns and how to loot them. Additionally, I'll also think about my potential extract so that I can calculate an appropriate route and stick to that. And now, I'll loot the closest good loot spawns as well as any nearby stashes on my chosen route to extract. It's important that you keep assessing potential risks in your proximity and decide for yourself whether to go for certain loot spots or to avoid them. If you hear shots nearby and you're not willing to fight, make sure to get away from those shots as quickly as possible. If we do end up running into a player, we'll quickly assess the situation and figure out if the fight is to our advantage or if we're running into a great risk of dying, and choose whether to fight or to avoid the fight altogether. Now we loot until we're full and happy to extract. Remember that resetting a raid, even if you haven't filled up your backpack completely, is sometimes the better decision to make. This was my take on a guide on how to improve your money-making methods in Escape from Tarkov. I hope you learned something today. I'm kinda new to YouTube, but I'm trying really hard to make my content as great as possible, so I sincerely hope that you liked it. If you did, feel free to leave a like on the video, comment, and subscribe to my channel. It would mean the world to me, and it would really help me out with the YouTube algorithm. I also stream almost daily on Twitch at twitch.tv/dex_. You'll see me do a lot more of those money runs as well as a ton of PvP on there. I'm also very interactive and always happy to talk to you guys and help you guys out, so feel free to check it out. Links in the description. If you have any suggestions for new videos as well as questions or any other comments, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys in the next video.